Welcome to the Nation Diplomatic Dispatch. I'm Daniel Rahman. We have an exclusive guest interview today, someone who is at the forefront of global diplomacy, who has been working hard to build bridges for the global South and the West, alongside the wider global community. Our guest today is the Foreign Minister of Türkiye, His Excellency HAKAN FIDAN, someone whose career has spanned intelligence, diplomacy, as well as strategic affairs. Now, as Malaysia and Türkiye strengthen ties in areas of trade, defense, and humanitarian cooperation, from ASEAN to Gaza, global conflicts to reform of international organizations, the key question that we will be discussing here today is, as Türkiye's global leadership role rises, what impact, consequences, and benefits does that have for Malaysia, ASEAN, and the global community? Minister Fidan, welcome to the show.
Thank you for the hospitality.
If I may get right into it and ask you a little bit about Malaysia-Turkey relations. Now, our Prime Minister, Datuk Sri Anwar Ibrahim, has described his friendship with President Erdogan as one of genuine fraternity and steadfast solidarity. How has this personal bond shaped recent and current Malaysia-Turkey cooperation?
Well, once again, thank you very much hosting me in your program and channel. The relations between Malaysia and Turkey, historically very strong, very good, and we have unbreakable bonds between two nations, and history, culture, and faith really bind us together. But it is up to us as the children of the time to really make use of our strong bonds to advance our cooperation in modern times on different areas, the politics, trade, security, technology, education, social interaction, and everything else. Of course, the leadership diplomacy is very much important. Our leaders are extremely close friends. They are enjoying their closeness and a strong bond between themselves. And we, as ministers of foreign affairs, really are benefiting from this fact, actually, because their closeness and good relations are really providing us a big umbrella, a cover to advance our agenda together. I mean, historically, the Malaysian leaders are very much close to Turkish leaders, and vice versa, Turkish leaders are very much close to Malaysian leaders. And really, we, as I said, as ministers and the other head of agencies, they are benefiting a lot to advance our current relations.
Yeah. Perhaps you can share with us some of the key diplomatic discussions that you're having with Malaysia in order to further this relationship, be it in areas of technology, commodities, defense, and such.
Well, it's subject to really hard work, to explore new areas. And this is what we've been trying to do actually for the last couple of years, because, as I said, certain things are most of the time taken for granted between nations. But when you take a closer look at, are you really making use of this close relations and close proximity? So when we ask this question, we've seen the fact that no, we've got to do a lot. There is ample amount of opportunity between two nations really to advance their level of cooperation. So when we took a closer look at, on technology, on trade, on defense industry, on education, there are a lot of things that we can do together. Right now, our trade volume is actually not reflecting the level of our friendship. We have just exceeded $5 billion US.
That's right.
Our target the immediate target is to reach 10 billion.
Yes, yeah.
So this is an area that we are working very hard. Defense industry is also an area. This is bilateral relations. We also have a very heavy regional and global issues agenda. On regional issues, maybe I'll come to that point later on.
Sure.
ASEAN is an important platform for us to work together. Today, this is why I am here to attend the ASEAN summit hosted by Malaysia as term chair. So ASEAN is an important geography for us. And Malaysia is an important country, member of ASEAN. And it is good that we work together to advance our relations here. But there are some global issues that we take a closer look at together, like the ongoing genocide in Gaza. Yeah. And issues in the Middle East and Muslim world. So there are also.
We can unpack that as we go along. I'd like to ask you a little bit about the economy. As you mentioned earlier, $10 billion is the target. Is there a particular timeline, or are there areas of particular interest that you believe that both countries can scale up in? I think we were talking a little bit about defense a little earlier.
Well, if you know President Erdogan, there is only one timeline. It's yesterday.
Okay.
It's not now, even now. It's yesterday. It should have happened.
Right.
10 billion target should have been reached yesterday. So I think that shows the urgency. That shows the actually the conducive environment that we can really increase the level of trade. So there are certain things that we need to increase the awareness of our business people and investors from both sides.
Right.
And this is what we are trying to do. And there are also some areas, not only business community, but government-to-government engagements are needed on trade and joint investment, especially on technology,
right.
on microelectronics, where Malaysia has a comparative advantage here.
Yeah.
So this is what we really envy. This is what we are trying to really benefit from. I know our defense industry companies, the big ones, they've been trying to explore the opportunities here in terms of technology cooperation. I think this is one good area. And energy.
Right. Renewable energy, sustainability, or still the traditional?
The traditional and the renewable energy, because you have Petronas, we have our government agents, companies. I think they can do a lot in third countries.
Minister, I'd like to ask about ASEAN. So you're here today. I saw online that you flew in from Pakistan yesterday. You're working hard on diplomacy. And of course, Turkey is a sectoral partner to ASEAN. Yeah. Now, what are your plans coming to Malaysia and being part of the ASEAN Regional Forum as well as the related meetings?
Well, we have a big agenda related to ASEAN meeting and ASEAN geography in general. Here, sometimes between nations, you have different categories of relations. It might be, some problematic relations because of your geography and history. Right. It might be some concerns. But with ASEAN, ASEAN historically have no problem with Turkey. Turkey has no problem with ASEAN countries. And that gives us huge opportunity to advance on a positive agenda. Right. So we are here to explore the opportunities for both sides. How can we really complement each other economically, politically, technologically, and other areas? So there is a good opportunity for both parties to work on trade, work on technology, to work on investment, especially Turkish business people and investors. We've been witnessing for the last couple of years. They've been increasing level of engagement and investment in ASEAN countries. This is a big plus for us, and vice versa. And the movement of people, the social interaction, the tourism between two sides are exploding now. That's right. It's a good numbers, skyrocketing numbers, and Turkish people are increasing, showing good interest to ASEAN countries, to travel, to explore, to get to know, because long time they've been traveling to Europe, but now they are exploring good places in ASEAN countries, and vice versa. And people from ASEAN countries, they are also coming to Turkey as a tourist. And we see a lot of students, again, the interaction from Turkey to ASEAN, from ASEAN countries to Turkey. Yeah. These are really exciting areas that, gives us a huge hope.
Yeah. Minister, I'd like to stay on the point earlier you mentioned about the relation between ASEAN and Turkey has been strong. what we also see out there is many different regions around the world coming up with Indo-Pacific strategies. Canada has one, the US has one, parts of Europe have one, even Australia has one. And sometimes there's an element of, expectations imposed on ASEAN, for example, increasing in defense spending or different changes of rules within the society. Now, how does Turkey view the long-term relationship with ASEAN? You've mentioned, of course, social, tourism, defense, technology, but in terms of that collaborative efforts to move up together, what are your thoughts on that?
Well, as I stated, we have a positive agenda.
Yeah.
Because of our geographies, because of our histories. This is something that you don't always get with other countries. This is my point, especially where we are living as Turkey in our neighborhood, vis-a-vis Black Sea, Balkans, Caucasus, Mediterranean, Middle East. We have a lot of related geographies. But when it comes to ASEAN countries, we have a completely 100% positive agenda. That gives us a big leverage, to really work hard and advance our interest. So ranging from defense industry, energy, technology, and other areas of economy and investment really are the target areas for us to increase level of cooperation, because Turkey have developed a good solid base on defense industry. Because of our bitter neighborhood, we had to defend ourselves, and whereas here it's a quiet and peaceful place most of the time, so I think therefore you didn't need much to really develop. So we can complement each other. Whereas on microelectronic, you have a comparative advantage, and we can really benefit on that. And there are other areas that we are, as I said, and trade areas, the production facilities. Many Turkish companies are and the factories are looking places to really move their industrial base to other countries.
Right.
I've seen many Turkish companies are moving their facilities as far as to Mexico, for instance.
Right.
For trade opportunities. I've seen a lot of companies, they move their factories to Egypt. And now I am seeing some factories are trying to come to ASEAN region for some comparative advantage on export and import issues.
Thank you for that view on ASEAN, because it's refreshing to hear from a leader that ASEAN is seen as a partner of growth. And as you said, the positive intentions and the positive mobility. Minister, I'd like to take our conversation a little bit to something mentioned earlier, for example, the position on the genocide in Gaza. Now, Malaysia has consistently raised its voice on the issue, with our Prime Minister, Datuk Seri Anwar Ibrahim, acknowledging Turkey's efforts in the region. Now, of course, Malaysia, we are a smaller country, we are further from the Middle East. But in your opinion, how can both our countries translate this shared concerns into joint concrete actions, particularly in humanitarian aid and post-conflict reconstruction?
Well, thank you. Unfortunately, the ongoing genocide in Gaza is something that really burns us deep inside. It is something that it never leaves a taste in our mouth. So this is a bitter situation for all of us. It is a big failure for humanity in general, but also for Muslims in particular. So as an important part of Muslim Ummah, Malaysia, also like Turkey and other countries, has responsibilities to shoulder on Gaza issues, and we see that, we really appreciate what Prime Minister Anwar Ibrahim is really standing for when it comes to Gaza and defending Masjid al-Aqsa and the rights of oppressed Palestinians and the freedom of occupied Palestinian territory. This is something that we need to be very cooperative, and we need to stand shoulder by shoulder, because if we don't unite against such barbarism, it will come and find any of us other places.
But Mr. If I may jump in, but if we unite and take a position, especially against the perpetrator of the genocide, countries like Malaysia are vulnerable, right, to potential, I don't know what you may say, potential reactions, right? We saw recently, for example, American presidents speak about potential tariffs on countries that are part of BRICS, right, which is more of a trade and economic bloc. So what do you see as Turkey's role in mediating or ensuring that there is a different outlook towards these challenges that we take when it comes to humanitarian issues?
Well, as I said, unity is very much important, and coordinated pressure is very much important when it comes to this humanitarian issue, because the 2 million Gazan people are taken hostage. The entire Gaza has been turned into a big concentration camp. It's like camps from Second World War, and people deliberately, intentionally are subject to starvation and harsh weather and everything else. So this is something happening on the broad deadline. We cannot let this continue. So I think as long as we are on the right side of the history, it's not important who is putting what, who is telling what. So because we are defending the right position. So and when it comes to mediation and advancing certain agenda with some Western countries and particularly with the United States, I think diplomacy plays an important role, especially when it comes to relations with Mr. Trump. It is our own experience that when you really have open and honest conversation with Trump administration, there is a lot you can do together, because this is our experience as Turkey. And as you know, Mr. Erdogan is really enjoying strong relations with President Trump.
Yeah. And Turkey, and your role specifically, in your previous role as Director of Intelligence, as well as your current role as Foreign Minister, you have led dialogues across conflicting parties. And that is something that has come up quite prominently in my readings in preparation for this interview. And you've recently had efforts with regards to areas in Africa and the Middle East. Now, sometimes I imagine that it could get quite tiring and lonely even. If you could make a request from partners like Malaysia, even like Indonesia, what would they be, and how would you call them to get more involved?
On mediation?
Well, on negotiations, mediation, on finding that diplomatic solution to the conflicts that you see happening around us.
Well, as I said, in our region, because of peculiarities of our region, you don't have much choice actually, because you are going to either fight or mediate. So mediation is something that not only in our interest, but also as the responsible country of the region, is our responsibility in the region, and also a vision of the foreign policy of Mr. Erdogan, President Erdogan. So therefore, we've been mediating trying to contribute to ceasefire talks in Gaza, and we did a lot during the war between Israel and Iran. And what's happening in Ukraine now, something that we are trying to do our best between Ukraine and Russia. And in Caucasus again, and in Africa we did a lot, and there are other countries that we are working quietly, because most of the time it has to be quiet and discreet because of the sensitivity of the issues at hand. So mediation is a big diplomatic tool, you know. When I was in intelligence and military, I was always, I tested many times. If diplomats can do job, better, you will leave less burden for military and intelligence. Okay. So, so therefore, when I became Minister of Foreign Affairs, I told myself, now it is your time to be tested, because when I was long years of Chief of Intelligence, I was claiming that the diplomats should do their job better. So leave less burden for us. Now this is what I am trying to do actually.
Yes.
That's why I work very hard for mediation, because unless, if you fail in mediating the things, so it goes to the shoulders of the military and the others.
That's right.
So not only third-party intervention, but also for our problems with other countries. We try to employ very sophisticated mediation technologies and diplomatic tools between the sides. And for us to address our own problems in the region, we have very problematic region, especially in the eastern part of our country. We have Syria, Iraq, Iran. They've been having different of problems, both internally and externally, and globally sometimes. Very complex set of problems that also has reflection on us as Turkey. So you have to identify, you have to analyze, then you have to come up with specific diplomatic methodology for each kind of problem. So you have to start conducting this strategy. And the objective is to find diplomatic solutions, all the existing problems. You have to be transparent. You have to have sympathy for the other party. And our president says most of the time, any solution has to be win-win solution. You just can't think of yourself all the time. When you engage in diplomacy, you have to also pay attention to other side's interests too. Otherwise, it cannot be a real diplomacy.
President Erdogan has a very famous saying, right? The world is bigger than five.
Yes.
And institutional reform of global organizations is something that many have spoken. And I remember one of your speech speaking about the African Union should have a permanent seat in the Security Council. What are your thoughts on current efforts to reform international organizations, and what more do you think ASEAN can do?
Well, ASEAN can, as they are doing, first of all, they need to form a coherent policy regarding reforming the broken international system.
Are we not coherent enough?
No, you are coherent, but you are coherent on a lot of issues. Maybe you need to move to reforming the international institutions, because you are, by nature, very much busy with the regional development issues, trade issues, perfect. But within the wider picture, the world that we operate, or the system that we operate within, is having existential problems. So those problems are coming and finding us wherever we are. It doesn't matter you are in Asia Pacific or in China or Asia or Middle East or Europe or Africa. So when you have problem within the international system, it affects badly everybody, one way or another. So it is then our joint responsibility to form a view to address this problem. As you know, the current international system was established right after the Second World War.
That's right.
And now, that time we used to have only around 55 nation states.
That's right.
Now we have 193, the last figure, registered nation states at UN. And now those nation states, some of them used to be very young, but now they are becoming a very able, competent nation states. They are increasing level of their use of power and influence. And then in addition to nation states, we are seeing the rise of big companies.
Right.
Not in traditional sense.
That's right.
But also the new big tech companies. With big tech comes with big money.
That's right.
And and then we have technological revolutions in different forms. Since the formation of the current international system, I think we've been through 3 or 4 another successive technological revolutions. Starting from invention of transistor, then IC circuits, now then artificial intelligence, quantum, internet, digitalization. It's all just accelerating the history. Now we have a big complex matrix. And then we need to identify the problem properly, and we need to, as humanity, bring a solution to existing structural problem. And unfortunately, when you take another look at the root of the current problem, we need to change the mentality.
Okay.
If your intention is a domination of the international system by creating an environment only for yourself, this is another agenda. If your intention and policy is to have an international system where it treats everybody equally, and when somebody stays behind or cannot perform as well as, so the system can help
them along. Yeah.
So unfortunately, all the time, every international system that we had came with throughout the history was established by the winners.
That's right.
And victorious powers. So naturally, they all served the interests of the winners. But each time we see that those systems might have a limited lifetime. So it is time to draw really historical lessons to demonstrate the maturity of the human being that we reached at the end of this historical conjecture.
On that, I think that's a really fascinating point, the importance of history, the importance of understanding culture, geography, and acknowledgement of technology. How would you then say that the global community can rewrite the history, and it's not just based from the perspective of winners, but perspective of everybody being brought along and no one is left behind because they just were unfortunate or due to some historical abnormality? How do you rewrite this future or the reorganization of international organizations to be fairer and more just?
Well, this is the very question that we are looking for an answer. As Turkey, this is exactly our foreign policy mission. To come up with an international system that treats everybody equally and especially looks after the ones who left behind. So therefore we need to start having first an open and honest conversation. So in the current system, nobody would like to give up from their competitive advantage. So whether they have nuclear power, whether they have some seat at UN Permanent Security Council. So those are like given rights. Nobody would like to give up. But those rights are also working against the interests of the rest of the international community most of the time. So my fear is, to be honest, if we don't draw lessons from the history, unfortunately, in order to come up with a new international system, we have to have another major conflict. But as humanity, we must have learned from history. We don't need to repeat this mistake again.
That's right.
If we insist on going on with the current international system, with the current balance of interest and power, so it's obvious that we will run into a major crisis. We have already started running into major crisis. Look at the war in Ukraine or the things in Gaza and Middle East. So it's just a matter of time and reason for, God forbid, a bigger escalation.
That's right.
We don't need to do that. We have
the
aql. We have our logic. We have our reason. We know that this is coming. But we need to have an ahlak, as we said.
That's
Islam,
right.
An ahlak and wisdom and virtue, really to accept the fact that we have to share.
That's right. Then my final question, it brings me nicely to this point. A country like Malaysia, what are the global values that Turkey and Malaysia can jointly project to promote global peace and stability?
I think we have a lot because of our history, because of our faith, and because of our culture and people and geography, because we are living in different parts of the world with the same values. This means a lot. This means a lot. So we can really create a big synergy by forming a platform to really address those issues, to really advance the positive agenda for humanity. And that could also attract a lot of other people and the countries and the institutions. And this is already happening. It doesn't have to be very formalistic approach, but our leaders, our societies, our people, whenever they have opportunity, they come together shoulder by shoulder, because in modern world, the world has a lot of is offering a lot of opportunities for engagement at different level.
That's right.
One country now is engaging with different institutions, different actors, different subjects. So everybody's interacting with everything and everything. So this is creating a complex matrix, as I said before. But within this crowd and noise, there is always clear sign between Turkey and Malaysia, and so this is an historical bond. We have the similar bonds in the region with other countries, so we have to make use of this, as I said.
Yeah. Minister FIDAN, thank you so much for your insights. You've truly shared various perspectives from ASEAN to the Middle East, and the work that you do in diplomacy is truly admirable, and we wish you all the best.
Well, thank you for the hospitality.
Yeah. That's all the time we have for today on the Nation Diplomatic Dispatch. Thank you for being with us. Till next time, see you again.